I never thought a man could feel like a guest at his own wedding. The ballroom shimmered with gold and crystal, every light catching in the surface of champagne flutes and jeweled gowns. From the outside, I must have looked like the luckiest man alive, a handsome groom beside a woman most would sell their soul to marry. And in a way, I had sold something, just not my soul. My freedom. Serafina Vale stood beside me, her fingers laced through mine like they were welded there. Her smile was practiced, perfect, the kind of expression that made people lean in just to bask in it. She wore a dress the color of moonlight, the silk so fine it caught every flicker of the chandeliers. People whispered that she was a beauty incarnate. I knew better. The wedding wasn't about love. It was about debt. My father's company had collapsed, drowning in lawsuits and unpaid loans. Serafina's family, with its wealth and ruthless precision, stepped in, not to save us, but to claim us. My father signed the contract, hands trembling, his voice thick when he told me it was the only way to protect our home. So here I was, ring on my finger, shackled in all but name. She raised her glass toward me as the murmuring crowd gathered close. To my husband, she said, voice ringing like crystal, may he always know how deeply I cherish him. It sounded tender. It looked tender. And yet, as her amber eyes locked onto mine, I felt the chill in them. It was the same look a collector gives a rare, caged bird. I lifted my own glass, a deep red wine I didn't remember picking, and clinked it against hers. The first sip was warm, sweet, and strangely heavy. It spread through my tongue like syrup, thick and slow. You're pale, she murmured, her lips brushing the rim of her own glass. Don't be nervous. You're safe now. Safe. The ballroom spun just slightly, the gold blurring into molten streaks. My grip tightened on the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. Somewhere in the fog of chatter and laughter, a voice, low, male, drifted past my ear. Damien. I'd met him once, months ago, when Serafina first appeared in my life. Tall, lean, a smile like a blade. He leaned toward her now, and though my head felt stuffed with cotton, I caught his words. By tomorrow, he'll be exactly where you want him. Her reply was a soft hum of agreement. The crowd laughed at some toast I didn't hear. I set my glass down carefully, the weight in my limbs making even that small movement an effort. Across the room, Damien's gaze flicked to me, assessing, almost amused. Serafina's hand slid around my waist, guiding me back toward the head table. You should rest soon, she whispered. Our life together begins tomorrow, and I want you ready for it. She pressed a kiss to my temple. Her lips were warm, but her voice, low and certain, carried a promise I couldn't mistake. This wasn't the beginning of a marriage. It was the first step into a cage. I woke to silence. Not the comforting kind you get in the early morning, when the world is still stretching and yawning. This was heavier, a silence that pressed down on me, like someone had sealed the air shut. The bed beneath me wasn't mine. It was absurdly large, the mattress swallowing me in its softness. Sheets of ivory satin clung to my skin, cool against the warmth of my body. The ceiling above glittered faintly, tiny embedded lights like a constellation I didn't recognize. I sat up too quickly. My head throbbed, a dull, pulsing ache that dragged behind every movement. The last thing I remembered was the clink of glasses, the sweetness of the wine, Serafina's hand steady at my back, and Damien's voice, sharp in my ears. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and planted my feet on a rug so thick my toes sank in. Across the room, sunlight poured in through glass walls that seemed to go on forever, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. It should have felt open. It didn't. I crossed to the door, a sleek, white panel with no visible handle on this side. My fingertips skimmed the surface, searching for a latch, a button, anything. There was none. A lock, but only from the outside. I turned slowly, taking in the room. It was beautiful, offensively so. A chaise in deep emerald velvet. A glass desk with a vase of white orchids. Gold filigree mirrors that caught me in their reflection from every angle. Someone had gone to great lengths to make this place perfect. And perfection, I realized, could be another kind of prison. The door clicked. I stepped back as Serafina walked in. Her hair was loose now, spilling over her silk robe. She carried a tray, porcelain cups and a small pot of tea. Her smile was warm, almost tender. You're awake, she said, setting the tray down on the desk. I was worried you'd sleep all day. Where are we? My voice came out rough. Our home, she replied, as if that were the most obvious thing in the world. I wanted you to be comfortable. The first days are always delicate. Her eyes swept over me, not in the way of a lover admiring, but of an owner inspecting. This door, I said, nodding toward it, it's locked. Of course. She poured tea, the fragrant steam curling up between us. I can't have my husband wandering off before we've settled in, can I? Her tone was light, but the words sat heavy in my chest. I took a step toward her. You drugged me. Her smile didn't falter. You needed to rest. And now you're here, where you belong. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the room seemed to shrink around me. My father's signature on that contract flashed in my mind, his hands trembling as he passed me the pen. The price of his rescue had been my captivity. Serafina picked up a cup of tea and offered it to me. Drink. We have so much to talk about. And when I didn't take it, her eyes hardened just slightly, a glint of steel beneath the silk. This wasn't a home. This was a cell dressed in satin and gold. By the third day, I'd memorized every contour of the room, the faint crack in the gold filigree mirror, the way the orchids always faced the sunlight, the slow sweep of shadows across the floor. The city was out there, alive and loud, yet I was locked away like a relic no one could touch. That morning, Serafina came in carrying a small velvet box. She held it in both hands, cradling it as if it were something precious. A gift, she said, her tone warm but deliberate. I didn't move as she approached. She sat beside me on the bed, close enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and heady, the kind that lingered even after she left. She opened the box. Inside lay a silver bracelet, delicate and ornate, with intricate patterns etched into the metal. It looked expensive. Too expensive. Try it on, she said. I hesitated. Why? Her smile deepened, but her eyes stayed cold. Because I want to see it for you. It was easier to obey than to spark another argument. I slid my hand toward her, and she fastened it around my wrist. The metal was cool at first, but I could feel a faint weight pulling against my skin, a barely noticeable resistance, like there was something more to it than just jewelry. I shifted my arm, testing it. A subtle click came from somewhere inside the bracelet. What's in it? I asked. She tilted her head, as though amused by my suspicion. A symbol, she said softly. That you belong to me. I wanted to tear it off, but her hand came up, fingers tracing over the silver in a slow, proprietary motion. You look perfect in it, she murmured. Later, I caught my reflection in the mirror, turning my wrist to examine the clasp. It wasn't a normal fastening, it was a micro-lock, the kind I'd seen in high-end security restraints. This wasn't just a bracelet. It was a shackle. That night, during dinner, I caught a glimpse of her phone screen when it lit up. A name appeared in bold white letters, Damien Cross. The previewed message read, "It's in place." Her eyes met mine across the table. She must have seen the flicker of realization on my face because her lips curved in the faintest, most dangerous smile I'd seen yet. The penthouse balcony stretched out like the bow of a ship, glass railings framing the sweep of the city far below. At night, the lights looked almost like constellations scattered across the ground, unreachable, untouchable. Serafina stood at the edge, wind stirring her hair, a glass of champagne in hand. Behind us, soft music played from hidden speakers, the notes just loud enough to mask the city's hum. You should breathe this in, she said without turning. Our life, it's all out there. I stepped forward, my wrist heavy with the silver shackle. The night air was cool, sharp in my lungs, a reminder of the world I could see but not touch. She turned then, offering her champagne flute. A toast. To our future. The word future felt like a chain around my neck. Still, I clinked the rim of my glass to hers, the sound unnervingly crisp. Her eyes narrowed just slightly as she studied me. You're still thinking about leaving. I'm thinking about having a choice, I said. She smiled faintly, tilting her head. You do have a choice, Ethan. Stay with me, or stay with me. Before I could answer, the vibration in my pocket startled me. I hadn't realized she'd left me my phone, or rather, a phone she'd let me keep. I pulled it out under the pretense of checking the time. One message. No contact name. Just. Cafe Eden. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Alone. C. Claire. I angled the phone away, my pulse quickening. She was alive. She was close. Serafina's gaze dropped to my hand, lingering just a second too long before flicking back to my face. Who's that? She asked casually. No one, I lied, slipping the phone into my pocket. Her smile didn't waver. If it's no one, you won't mind leaving it here tonight. I froze. She extended her hand, palm up. The city wind tugged at the silk of her dress, but her stance was steady, unyielding. Slowly, I placed the phone in her palm. She didn't even look at it, just tucked it into her robe pocket and stepped close enough that her perfume wrapped around me like smoke. Trust me, she murmured. You don't need anyone else. The next morning, the phone was gone. The charity gala was Serafina's domain, chandeliers dripping crystal, waiters in white gloves gliding between tables, the air perfumed with money and ambition. It was the first time she'd taken me out since the wedding, the first time I'd been around people who weren't on her payroll. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like a stage. I wore the tux she'd chosen for me, perfectly tailored, suffocating at the collar. The silver bracelet gleamed on my wrist, catching the light each time I reached for a glass or shook a hand. A prop for the world, a shackle for me. We stood near the marble staircase as she charmed a cluster of donors. I nodded when expected, laughed at the right moments, all the while scanning the room. There, an unguarded side door, waitstaff moving in and out. It led somewhere behind the scenes. When Serafina turned to greet an arriving couple, I slipped away, my pulse hammering in my ears. The hallway beyond was dim, lined with utility carts and stacked crates of champagne. I quickened my pace, nearly tasting the night air in my imagination. Going somewhere, Ethan? The voice was smooth, amused. Damien stepped out from a shadowed alcove, his tux immaculate, his bow tie slightly undone as if he'd just left a lover's bed. I froze. Get out of my way. He smiled, slow and knowing. You think you can walk out? She'd tear the city apart to find you. I don't care. Oh, you will, he said, stepping closer. His cologne, darker, spicier than Serafina's, filled the space between us. She doesn't like disobedience. And well, I enjoy watching what happens to those who try. Before I could answer, a familiar click echoed behind me. Serafina's heels. I turned, and there she was, serene as ever. Ethan, she said, her voice silk over steel, you're missing the best part of the evening. I needed air, I said flatly. You'll get plenty. At home. She reached into her clutch, and before I realized what was happening, she was kneeling in front of me, in that gown, in public, fastening a second length of silver chain to the bracelet. It ran discreetly down to a polished cuff hidden under the hem of my tux pants, locked around my ankle. A few passing staff glanced over, curious, but Serafina only smiled up at me as if adjusting a loose hem. Now, she whispered, you won't wander off. Damien watched, his smirk widening. She stood, looped her arm through mine, and guided me back toward the glittering light of the ballroom. The chain was short enough that every step back into the crowd reminded me, this wasn't my night. This wasn't my life. It was hers. I woke to the sound of porcelain clinking. The room was dim, lit only by the soft spill of moonlight through the glass wall. Serafina sat in the armchair near the bed, her legs crossed, robe falling open just enough to reveal a glimpse of silk nightgown. In her hands, a small teapot and 2 cups rested on a tray balanced across her knees. It's late, I muttered, my voice thick from sleep. Her smile was faint, almost tired. You've been restless. I thought something warm might help. I sat up slowly, the chain at my ankle clinking softly against the bed frame, a reminder that even in sleep, I was tethered. She poured the tea, the steam curling in delicate tendrils toward the ceiling. The fragrance was sweet, almost floral, but with a bitter undertone that made the back of my tongue tighten just smelling it. Drink, she said softly, passing me a cup. I'm not thirsty. Her eyes held mine, steady, unblinking. Ethan. Drink. I took a small sip to avoid a fight. The warmth slid down my throat, but beneath the heat was something else, a slow, creeping heaviness that began in my stomach and radiated outward. My fingers tingled. My limbs slackened. Why? I managed to whisper. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Because I love you too much to let you burn yourself out fighting me. You need to be calm. You need to be mine. I tried to set the cup down, but my hand was sluggish. The tea sloshed, spilling onto my wrist. The silver bracelet gleamed wetly in the moonlight. She reached out, wiping the spill with her thumb, and pressed a kiss to the spot. Better. The room tilted slightly. My eyelids grew heavier with each blink. Somewhere beyond the haze, her voice continued, soft, coaxing, but threaded with something cold. I spoke to Damien tonight. Claire's becoming a problem. We'll handle her soon. That name pierced the fog. What, did you? Her hand smoothed over my hair. Shoo, don't worry about her. She's not part of us. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was her face, serene, content, as if sedating me was just another act of affection. When I woke, sunlight was cutting sharp lines across the bed, but the warmth on my skin felt foreign. My head was still heavy, the world swimming a little each time I moved. Serafina was gone. The chain at my ankle had been lengthened, just enough for me to reach the desk. My phone, or rather, her phone for me, sat waiting, screen dark. I unlocked it, expecting the usual flood of messages from her handlers and friends I never met. Instead, the top of the feed caught me off guard, a trending post on social media. Missing person alert, Claire Morgan. Her face stared back at me, frozen in a candid photo I'd taken years ago, hair windblown, eyes squinting against the sun. The post claimed she hadn't been seen in 48 hours. My hands went cold. I scrolled down through the comments, speculation, strangers tagging her username, someone claiming they'd heard she was traveling, another swearing she'd been seen near the docks. But the official notice was clear: contact local authorities with any information. The conversation from last night slammed into my mind. Claire's becoming a problem. We'll handle her soon. I searched for her private messages, but the thread was empty, wiped clean. Not archived. Deleted. The door clicked. I shoved the phone aside and turned as Serafina entered, carrying a small bag from an upscale boutique. Good news, she said brightly. We're going to dinner tonight. Somewhere private. I kept my voice even. Did you hear about Claire? Her brow furrowed, just enough to look convincing. Claire who? The lie was too smooth, too practiced. She's missing. Serafina set the bag on the bed and crossed to me, her fingers brushing over the silver bracelet. People disappear all the time, Ethan. Sometimes by choice. Sometimes, not. Her eyes lingered on mine, daring me to ask the next question. I didn't. My stomach was already twisting in knots. That night, long after she slept, I sat in the darkness, staring at the city lights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face on that missing poster, and Serafina's calm, unblinking expression when I told her. I spent the next 2 days playing the role she wanted. Smiling when she spoke to me. Nodding at her little monologues about our future. Accepting the tea without comment, though I never drank more than a sip. I laughed at her jokes. I let her rest her hand on my knee at dinner. I even thanked her for the clothes she picked out. And slowly, her grip on my movements loosened. The chain at my ankle was replaced with a longer length. The bracelet stayed, but the subtle tension in her eyes eased. She began leaving the door unlocked when she went to take phone calls on the balcony. That's when I knew I had my window. On the third night, she announced we'd be having a private dinner upstairs in the penthouse lounge, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows and, more importantly, a service elevator tucked behind a side door. I waited until she left to check on the wine. My hands trembled as I crossed the lounge, my footsteps silent against the plush carpet. The service elevator sat in the corner, its metal doors reflecting the dim light. I pressed the button. A low ding. The doors slid open. And Damien stepped out. He was dressed in black tonight, no bow tie, no attempt at civility. He looked me over like I was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Going somewhere? He asked, voice almost lazy. I didn't answer. He stepped forward, and the faint metallic scent of gun oil drifted from the jacket he wore. She's proud of you, you know. Says you're learning how to behave. I'm leaving, I said. My voice surprised me, steady, quiet. His smirk was a slow, deliberate thing. That's the problem. You think you get to decide. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Serafina's. Damien didn't move aside. She entered the lounge moments later, a bottle of wine in hand. Her smile never faltered, but her eyes flicked from me to Damien and back. I leave you for 2 minutes. She set the bottle down, walked over, and looped her arm through mine like nothing was wrong. Come, Ethan, she murmured, steering me toward the table. Dinner's getting cold. Damien stepped back into the shadows, watching us go. The service elevator doors slid shut behind him with a hiss, like the ceiling of a vault. From the penthouse balcony, the ocean was only a strip of silver beyond the city sprawl, a line that shimmered under the moonlight and seemed to whisper freedom. I started timing the ferry schedules, memorizing the rhythm of the harbor lights, counting how long the security patrols lingered on the piers. I'd grown up near the water, I knew how to read tides, how to follow the current. If I could just reach the docks, the sea could carry me somewhere Serafina couldn't follow. She must have sensed the shift in me. One evening, she joined me on the balcony, a glass of red wine in her hand. Her robe was cinched loosely, the night air tugging at the silk. "You stare at the water like it's going to answer you," she said, her tone soft but weighted. "Maybe it will." She sipped her wine, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I've been thinking," she said after a pause. "We should get away from the city. Just you and me. Somewhere quieter, more private." The word private knotted my stomach. "Where?" I asked. "A villa on the coast. Cliffs on 3 sides, the sea on the 4th. No neighbors for miles." Her smile was faint, but her gaze was sharp. "You'll love it there." She made it sound like a honeymoon. I heard the lock on a cage snapping shut. That night, I stayed awake long after she'd fallen asleep. From the window, I watched the ocean. The waves seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. I promised myself I'd reach it. Not with her. Not in chains. The villa looked like something out of a luxury travel magazine, pale stone walls, terracotta roof tiles, balconies draped in flowering vines. From the cliffside, the ocean stretched endlessly, blue by day and black by night. Waves struck the rocks far below, their rhythm deep and constant. Serafina guided me through the arched front doors as if unveiling a surprise. "Isn't it perfect?" she asked. It was perfect, in the way a painting is perfect, beautiful, untouchable, and trapped in a frame. Inside, the air was cool and faintly perfumed with lavender. The rooms were open and airy, but every window was barred, the locks disguised as ornate brass latches. The main doors had a double locking system I'd only ever seen in bank vaults. Guards, 2 of them, dressed in casual clothes, lounged near the garden steps. They smiled politely when I passed, but their eyes were always scanning. Serafina led me to a bedroom with a view of the sea. "From here," she said, standing beside me at the window, "you can watch the horizon every night. It'll remind you how far away the rest of the world is." I didn't answer. That evening, she lit candles in the dining room and served dinner herself. The flicker of the flames softened her face, making her look almost human again. She told me stories about her childhood summers, sailing, swimming, sneaking champagne from her father's cellar. When I didn't respond with the enthusiasm she wanted, her hand found mine on the table. She squeezed, her smile unwavering. "I know what you're thinking," she murmured. "You're wondering if you can get away from here. And maybe you'll try." Her grip tightened. "But I'll always find you, Ethan. That's not a threat, it's a promise." Later that night, I sat in the dark, the sea wind slipping through the shutters. I could hear her moving in the next room, humming softly. And I realized, in her mind, this wasn't a prison. It was paradise. For both of us. The storm came in without warning. By mid-afternoon, the sky had turned the color of wet ash, and the wind lashed the shutters with sharp, irregular bursts. Waves pounded the cliffs so hard the villa seemed to tremble with each impact. Serafina lit the fireplace in the study, a room I'd never been allowed in until now. Shelves lined the walls, heavy with leather-bound books. A single desk sat in front of the windows, its surface perfectly ordered except for a black folder lying in the center. "Sit," she said, motioning to the chair opposite hers. I hesitated before taking the seat. She opened the folder, sliding a stack of documents toward me. I recognized my father's signature on one of them. The weight in my chest tightened. "This," she said, tapping the page, "is everything your family owes. Every last dollar. And this." She slid another sheet forward, "is the release agreement. Signed. Effective immediately." I stared at her. "Why are you showing me this?" Her eyes softened, but it was the softness of a predator lowering its head before the pounce. "Because I can erase it all. No debt. No lawyers. No creditors breathing down your neck. Your family gets to start over, clean. And what do you want in return?" She smiled faintly, as though I'd asked the most obvious question in the world. "Stay with me. No more escape attempts. No more defiance. You stop looking at the ocean like it's calling your name." I leaned back, the leather chair creaking under my weight. "So my freedom, for theirs." "Exactly." The storm cracked outside, a jagged streak of lightning flashing against the windows. I could almost see my father's face in my mind, worn, tired, relieved. He would tell me to take the deal. He'd think I was insane not to. But then I remembered Claire's voice in that last hidden message before she disappeared, "Don't lose yourself." I'll think about it, I said. Serafina's gaze lingered on mine, long enough for the air between us to feel like it might snap. Then she stood, sliding the folder back into the desk drawer. You'll decide, she said, her tone confident, and I know which choice you'll make. She left me in the study as the storm raged on, the locked drawer humming in my mind like a ticking clock. The second storm hit just 3 nights later. By sunset, the wind was howling through the cliffside like a living thing. The guards had retreated to the covered patio, hunched over cigarettes and trying to keep the rain off their faces. I'd been planning for this. For days, I'd mapped every wire and camera in the villa. I'd watched the guards' patrols until I could predict each step. The storm was the cover I needed. It would drown out noise, kill visibility, and, with luck, disrupt power. When Serafina went upstairs to change for dinner, I moved. In the laundry room, behind a cabinet, I'd found the breaker panel. My hands shook as I flipped the main switch. The villa plunged into darkness, only the sound of the storm filling the air. Shouts came from outside. The guards cursed in the wind. I moved fast, heading for the service door that led down the cliff path toward the hidden boat dock. I'd almost reached it when a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking my way. Damien. No tux this time, just black cargo pants and a rain jacket, his hair plastered to his forehead by the spray. He didn't look surprised. I told her you'd try again, he said over the roar of the wind. She said to let you. Just so you'd remember why you can't leave. I'm not staying here, I said. He stepped closer, rain dripping from his chin. You think she's the one chaining you? No, Ethan. You chained yourself the moment you agreed to the contract. I pushed past him, but he caught my arm. The bracelet dug into my skin. You really think you can survive out there without her protection? He asked, tightening his grip. You're nothing without her. I ripped my arm free. We'll see. The fight was fast and messy, shoving, fists colliding in the rain, the taste of blood in my mouth. He slipped on the wet stone, his head hitting the wall with a sickening crack. He slumped to the ground, unconscious. I didn't check if he was breathing. The path to the dock was slick under my shoes. Lightning split the sky, and for one blinding second, I saw the sea, black, wild, and waiting. The dock swayed under my feet, each wave slamming the boards like the ocean wanted to tear the place apart. The small speedboat bobbed violently, ropes straining against the cleats. My hands were numb from the cold as I fumbled with the knots. Rain stung my eyes, turning every movement into a fight. The moment the last rope came free, the boat lurched, nearly throwing me into the water. I climbed in, gunned the engine, and tore away from the cliffs. The villa receded into a shadow against the storm, just another dark shape swallowed by the horizon. For the first time in months, there were no walls. No locks. No Serafina. Only the sea. Hours blurred together. I kept my eyes fixed on the thin line where black water met the faintest promise of dawn. When I finally saw land, my chest tightened. The coastline was rugged but familiar, the outskirts of a harbor I'd visited years ago with Claire. By the time I docked, the storm had broken into a cold drizzle. I stepped onto the pier, my legs unsteady, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I'd made it. Or so I thought. Ethan. I froze. Claire stood at the end of the pier, hood pulled low over her face, a duffel bag slung across her body. She looked thinner, sharper, like the months had carved her into something harder. Before I could speak, she stepped closer, eyes scanning me as if making sure I was real. I heard you were gone, she said, her voice low. I told myself it wasn't true. I swallowed. How did you? She told me you'd come back. The rain dripped from her hood, her expression unreadable. And then I saw it, the glint of metal at her wrist. A bracelet. The same kind Serafina had forced on me. You're not free yet, Claire whispered. None of us are. The harbor was quiet except for the soft slap of waves against the pier. Claire stood just a few feet away, the rain between us like a thin, cold curtain. Her bracelet caught the faint light, that same cursed metal biting into her wrist. How long? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted toward the open sea, as if she could still see the outline of the villa beyond the horizon. Long enough to understand her, she said finally. Long enough to know she doesn't let go of anything she claims. The words settled in my chest like lead. I could feel the boat at my back, the easy choice. Get in, push off, keep running. But I knew now it wouldn't matter how far I went. Serafina's reach was wider than the ocean. She didn't chase because she feared losing. She chased because she enjoyed the hunt. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. If you run, she'll find you. If you hide, she'll smoke you out. The only way this ends, is if we end it. The storm had left the air heavy, the scent of salt and diesel mixing in my lungs. Somewhere in that moment, the decision crystallized, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the chasing to stop. For me. For Claire. I'm not going back to be hers, I said. I'm going back to finish it. Claire's lips curved in the faintest, coldest smile. Then we start at dawn. The clouds broke just enough for the horizon to burn with a strip of pale gold. The tide was shifting. Tomorrow, the sea would carry us toward her, not away. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what waited on the other side.